Thanks for joining. Um, so today we're gonna try to answer, hopefully we're gonna answer your question on how to get your project funded. My name is Seraya. I'm from the Web3 Foundation. I work in the grants team as a technical evaluator.
Yeah,
This is
and I'm Santiago. Is this working, by the way? Is it working? Yeah, perfect. I'm Santiago. I do work on the Parity side, trying to support builders in our ecosystem. Although this is about getting funded in general, it's about general means of support across the ecosystem. And between the two of us, we're going to just try to walk you through the different avenues that exist and try to see what's the best path forward for your own use case, I guess.
right. And with that, so mainly we're gonna focus on these two programs, but we also gonna touch on other programs such as the Incubator, the Pioneers Prize, treasury funding. Also, we're gonna mention parachain specific grant programs, and we're gonna talk about Square One eventually. So first, I want to give you an overview of the grants program. It provides funding through milestone-based grants, and basically we have 3 grant levels. So for level 1 grants, you will get funding for up to 10,000 US dollars. Level 2, you get up to 30,000, and level 3, you will get up to $100,000. And depending on the level you choose, there's a different number of approvals from the grants committee that is necessary to get your proposal through. So for grants over 100K, by the way, it's also possible, but on top of the approvals of the grants committee, you will need to get the approval of the Web3 Council as well. So it's just a bit of a higher barrier, which makes sense because it's a higher amount of money. It's also possible to get fast track to the SPP if you have a level 2 or level 3 grant, if you do a good job. So the Substrate Builders Program. And also introductions to VCs in case of the level 3 grants are possible as well. Then when it comes to the project requirements, it has to be technical in nature. So we don't fund any marketing or design or event based projects, for example. Mostly we focus on development and implementation, code implementations, but we do research grants as well. Another thing that is important to highlight is that everything has to be open source. You will be able to pick from different open source licenses such as Apache v2 or GPL v3, MIT, or also unlicensed. If you have a more exotic license you want to use, you can always reach out to us and we can have a conversation about that. There are a couple of things that your project must not do. So you must not have had any successful token sale in the past for that specific project. It must not mention any specific tokens, and obviously nothing illegal and also nothing gambling related. So I just want to quickly walk you through the process of applying for a grant. So first you would have to go on GitHub and fork this repository, the Web3 Grants Program repository, and then you would have to fill out the application template. I'm just quickly going to show you on GitHub. So it's a markdown file, pretty simple and straightforward. So you will have to put some meta information, talk a bit about your project, give a brief overview, some details. You will have to describe why you think it's going to be beneficial to the overall ecosystem, and you will have to give an overview of related projects and potential competitors. And yeah, a team overview, the development status, and eventually the development roadmap. And this is actually one of the most important parts of the proposal, because here you will actually commit to what you will deliver. So once you get accepted and you deliver the milestone, we will actually check against this contract, against this specification, to see whether or not you actually meet all these specs. before you will get any payout. Right. So, and with that, yeah, back to the process. So once you fill the application template, you're gonna make a pull request on the repository, and the grant committee is gonna provide you with feedback directly on GitHub. So just GitHub comments. And once you have enough approvals, the pull request is going to be merged, and by that the grant is formally signed. And just to highlight, no, we don't provide any upfront payments, so you will only get the payments, as I mentioned before, after the milestone have been delivered on a per milestone basis. So that's how a typical application process works. We also have private grants, but so first of all, we prefer the public way because it's a really open and collaborative and transparent way of engaging with the community, and it allows the community to have a lot of insights of what is being funded, what we are using the money for, and they can also scrutinize our processes, our comments, and if you want, you can also comment on these pull requests yourself if you think your comments add value to the proposal. Maybe you know something that we don't, then feel free to collaborate in that way as well. An alternative to that would be the private grant applications. So for that we have a Google form, but again, we really prefer the public way for the reasons I mentioned. And you should expect longer waiting periods for the private grant process if you choose to go that way. Then regarding the projects that we fund, for most of our grantees, they actually come up with their own projects, and that's completely fine. But if you want to have a more targeted approach to what we think or what the community thinks is desperately needed in the ecosystem, you can have a look at the RFPs. So RFP stands for Request for Proposal, and it's basically a declaration of interest for others to submit a grant or a treasury application. You will be able to see the RFPs on our grant webpage. Quickly going to show you. So we have a list of open RFPs. So for those, you can always apply, and you're very much invited to do so. Those that are under development, for those, the barrier is higher because we already received at least one, or in some cases multiple, grant proposals that we signed. But if you think that your solution is better or somehow unique and adds enough additional value to the ecosystem to justify an additional grant, then you're free to also still add another proposal to that. Okay, so, sorry. I'm not done with this. So most of the RFPs are actually created by the W3 Grants team, but everybody in the community is invited to add their own RFPs. If you think something is missing, you're more than welcome to submit a pull request, and then the process is going to be very similar to a grant proposal being approved. Yeah, over there you can see a few examples of open RFPs. Next, I want to show you some figures. So first of all, the impact that the grant program has is pretty good illustrated by this cake diagram. As you can see, only roughly 1/4 of all pirate chains haven't received any grants with us. So most actually have. Some of them decided to terminate the grant, or they just didn't finish the whole grant. But around 60% have at least one grant that they finished. And as you can see, we have a lot of different categories that we cover. So that's not a final list, but those are the most common categories. And yeah, we cover a huge range from cryptography over APIs, smart contracts, UIs, dev tools, and yeah, obviously, as you can see, the biggest part of the grants are actually runtime modules. So chain palettes, basically, for the frame substrate framework. Another thing I want to mention is the open source stack. So it covers all layers of the Polkadot tech stack, and it contains over 300 different projects. It's actively maintained. If you want to build something new, that's a good place to go to have a look whether or not maybe somebody else already came up with this idea, or maybe there are some projects that you could reuse as a dependency for your project, or that you can use as a fundament for your project. It's being maintained on the Polkadot wiki page, and we also maintain it every time when we accept a grant delivery. This stack would get updated as well. If you think any project is missing there, you're free to contribute there as well. All right, with that, I hand over to Santi.
Well, thank you very much, Seraya, for that. That was very nice. Yeah, perfect. So one thing that Seraya was talking about before was this fast track for level 2 and level 3 applications in the grants program onto the Substrate Builders Program. So what is this thing that we call the Substrate Builders Program? In itself, it's a program that has been developed around 3 years ago now, that packages a lot of different support streams for developers in our ecosystem. The idea is that the SPP can help you get your project from an MVP stage all the way up to a parachain stage. However, something that I'm going to do and say before I get into the details of this is not the only way of becoming a parachain, right? Anybody can become a parachain. You don't need to be part of the SPP to become a parachain. But indeed, the SPP can serve as a nice interface if you're facing some difficulties or if you think that your project can contribute massively into the Polkadot ecosystem. As said before, in itself, it's more than anything a support program, so funding in itself is not the main area for the SPP. When we talk about support, we talk about support in a lot of different areas. To start with, we are heavily committed into technical support, so we've developed a lot of different tools that help people into getting this technical support. First off, we've got open chats with developers in our ecosystem and inside of Parity as well that can get you answering questions quite fast. As of late, we've been focusing a lot on these questions, also feeding the Substrate Stack Exchange, that I would definitely recommend checking it out if you have any questions at all. Second thing to note about this is the SPP in itself is milestone-based too. So the idea is that when you start into the SPP, you commit to a set of milestones that last 3 months each. And every 3 months, we're going to sit down, get your code, get those milestones, get an engineer from Parity to actually review the entire code and let you know, hey, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, try doing this thing differently and whatnot, and give you very active input onto this. We internally call it like unofficial audits. It's not an audit, but it's definitely a guide on how to make the most out of Substrate and the way that you're using it. We also have partnerships with, for example, different auditing companies that can perform some fuzzing into your runtimes and also allow you to know what's going on. We help you then with deployment stuff, with getting a parachain and everything that's related to this, plus connecting you with marketing resources to get the word out there of the project that you're doing, connect you with different potential investors for your project as well, so that, again, the entire thing is as rounded as possible. Another way of getting funded into the ecosystem, and something that has been very active lately in the Polkadot ecosystem altogether in the last, let's say, 2 months since it went live in Polkadot, is on-chain treasuries, right? So the idea here is that anybody can go to either Polkadot or Kusama and submit a proposal, right? And say, hey, I want to build this. Dear Polkadot community, I want to build this, and this is how many tokens I'm going to get from you. Different from the W3 Foundation, that the W3 Foundation is paid after this is completed. The treasury pays the moment that this gets accepted, okay? Now, how to get this is not a walk in the park. It's not that you say, hey, I want this, and the chain gives it to you, but rather it requires a lot of like social agreements with different parties so that the ecosystem altogether votes into your proposal and says, yes, this is what we need. In general, proposing something into the treasury starts by saying, by opening a discussion publicly, either on the Polkadot forum, PokeAssembly, Subsquare, or any of these platforms, and you just leave it for the community for like around 2 to 3 weeks to say, hey, what are your concerns? What do you think? You try to answer the questions that the people might have and whatnot, and sort of like generate some initial consensus around these things. Once you feel confident about this consensus, you're going to go and actually make the proposal on chain. You will need to say which track you're going for. There are different tracks very well explained in the wiki page of Polkadot, but depending on how many dots you want, in this case, there's different limits into how fast and how many votes you actually need. And you're going to have to pay a decision deposit, meaning, okay, I'm so committed to this. Here's, let's say, 100 dot, whatever it might be, to actually get your voting to start. Then the voting will start, and if everything goes okay, you get funding for your project, and you get paid, you deliver it, and then you go back into the committee and say, here it is. Now, the focus of this, of course, has to be for the good of the Polkadot ecosystem, right? Anything can be proposed, yes, but the idea is that more than anything, we propose things that are good for the development of Polkadot as a network. So you're going to find a lot of different things. This is not, however, the only mechanism to spend money from the treasury. There are 2 others that I'd like to make emphasis with. One is what's called bounties, where the community says, we need to solve this particular problem, or we want to fund this particular area of development for Polkadot, and they create a pot of funds with a set of curators that target that and try to organize that, and then proposals go directly to the bounty. And the other one is tips. Maybe you do some cool thing, some cool little thing out there, and people say, hey, thank you for this. Here's a tip for you that again goes up to vote, and people have to apply for it. But if you go to the bounties themselves, there's 2 that I want to mention today. First one is this one called Incubator. You might have heard it this morning from the Open Zeppelin team as well. Incubator in itself is a bounty that was created with the aim of developing the WebAssembly contracts community, right? In itself, it had 3 different main aspects. One was to actually fund projects, right, and teams that wanted. The other one was to fund auditors for these projects so that they could actually deploy. And the last one was to help them with their actual development. Currently, unfortunately, new applications for Incubator are paused because the first cohort of Incubator has already been voted on and the people are building. But do keep an eye in the future for future cohorts if you want to build WebAssembly-based smart contracts with Inc. I think this would be a good bounty to look into. And another bounty that we have is what we call the Pioneers Prize. This is a bounty that has been approved a while ago and originally was tailored more than anything for CK innovations, right? With time, it has been moving into things, and I do believe that you guys could put proposals for it. But I would say that the ones that have the better chance of getting actually funded is those CK proposals. Right now, this bounty has a pot of 1 million dot waiting to be distributed for people that want to be funded for doing CK-related stuff. Until now, I believe it's been 5 winners so far, but still there's enough dot if you're building some CK stuff. Please feel free to look out for it and go at it. Now, Polkadot, Parity, Web3 Foundation, this is not the only thing that exists in the community today. Polkadot in itself is the Polkadot relay chain and all its parachains. And a lot of these parachains as well offer a lot of support for builders in the ecosystem. Sometimes we get super narrow-minded into, okay, I need to go to Polkadot, but in the end, if we look a bit outside of it, all these teams as well are proposing different avenues to support builders in the ecosystem and to build on top of it, right? So if you're thinking about building a smart contract on Solidity, well, just take a look at, for example, Moonbeam Foundation that's in there, right? Why not look into them, talk to them, see how you can collaborate, see how you can work together. And like this, a lot of others, right? Most of this, if you go into the grants page that Seraya was showing before, I'll link there down below. But if not, just look out for the parachain that you're interested in and see if they have anything. And if not, I'll get something for the last bit of it. But what I do want to get across is there's a huge amount of support in the ecosystem, and parachains are always super happy to help. So please feel free to reach out to them as well if needed. So this is a bit of a summary of the different types of support and how much money you could get from it, what's sort of like the time frame, how it's organized, who's sponsoring it, and whatnot. I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but I think that a lot of people are taking pictures, so you can see it afterwards, and the recording is going to stay. But all in all, this should help you decide more or less, OK, I should go through here or maybe through this other route. However, we have one last thing for you, and that is square one. So the idea of square one is that independently of what you're after, independently of what you need, square one helps you get there, right? So if after all this presentation, if after all the reading that you can do online, if after everything you still do not know what to do, just let us know. Let's just have a virtual coffee or something, and we'll help you navigate this sea of opportunities that Polkadot has to offer. Because it is quite confusing at times, but we can definitely help you out and try to help you just get into the right space that you might need for the right type of support, and as Seraya was saying at the beginning, be as successful as possible. But I want to pause it there. There's 4 minutes left in the clock, so that we can answer a couple of questions, do you think?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it from our side. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Over here. Nice.
Hey. Just wondering, Santiago, if you could elaborate on the incubators and the Pioneers programs, because you said it's for ZK, but it's not just for ZK. And the incubator, what's the focus for that?
So the focus of Incubator is WebAssembly based, right? So WebAssembly Inc. smart contracts. That's what they're funding. And when you think about this, there's 2 main opportunities there. One is projects that say, I want to build a smart contract that does this. And the other one is what's called the auditor's track. So if you're an auditing company or whatever, and you want to audit WebAssembly-based Inc. smart contracts, then you can apply for that as well. Right? So those 2 things are together there.
So there's no limit on the kind of project. Don't have to have a business model or benefit that you could just, if you make a smart contract and say, here's my thing.
Yes and no, right? So it's true that if it's not Inc.-based, you cannot, you can propose anything, right? But it's definitely not going to get approved. But if it's Inc.-based, there's a budget for it. And if there's more than the budget, you're going to start trying to be prioritized. And the creators will prioritize which ones make more sense. And if it's just, hey, I want to deploy a Flipper contract because I think it's cool, yeah, no, that's not going to go by, right? So the idea is that if the project it's in need of funding, it's building with Inc., and it's trying to bring something interesting, it's a good way of looking into it.
Also, the Pioneers program, you said it's mostly for ZK, but what's the actual spec for projects for that?
It's in a very similar fashion as what I was saying before about Inc. The aim of the Pioneers program, or Pioneers Prize as it's called, is to fund CK-related, could be investigations, not research. That's what I was looking for. Could be research, could be actual implementations of things, could be like different areas of spectrum, but in the CK realm that could impact Polkadot. And the other thing that it's open to is different node implementations for Polkadot itself. Hope that answers your question. Any other question? Right. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much.